material from other sources. So the book is really kind of just there to like give you maybe a little bit more detail on a few things, but if you feel like you really understand the lectures, then I would say you probably.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions before I get started?
Well, that's what I thought she'd say, but I didn't want to say it wrong.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started with Chapter 4. So Chapter 4 is going to cover some careers in animal science to kind of let you know what options are out there. I'm actually glad that this class has a chapter on that because I didn't learn about a lot of these careers until I was in graduate school, so I think this will be pretty helpful. So the objectives of this chapter are to give an overview of careers that are available in animal science, options for professional school, graduate school. We're going to talk a little bit about how to build your resume, apply for jobs, internships, and the advantages of internships. So to give you an overview of what animal science classes will give you, they'll give you a strong grounding in the sciences, an appreciation of animal behavior, breeding, genetics, microbiology, management, nutrition, physiology, reproduction, and muscle biology. They'll give you an understanding of the animal industry and critical thinking and international awareness, as well as communication skills, both written and oral, and the ability to work with other people and in teams. So animal science graduates can accept positions in diverse and challenging careers that have a wide range of things that you can do. So you could be a farmer, you could be a researcher, a veterinarian, you might work at a feed mill. So we're going to talk about some of the different areas and the specific jobs within those areas. So some skills that employers will look for are critical thinking, problem-solving ability, oral and written communication, ability to work in teams, and not just in teams, but also ability to work with people that may be from different cultural backgrounds or different situations than you are. International awareness, so they want you to be somewhat aware of things that are going on globally in animal science. And the knowledge of an academic. So you need to have the book knowledge and the knowledge that you gained from the classroom. Some areas of employment for animal science graduate students include agricultural services, animal breeding, animal health, which could be vaccines and pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, the dairy industry, laboratory animal care, research, technical support. So there's a lot. So this slide's continued. You can work in education with exotic animals at a zoo or something like that, a rescue place, corporate farms and ranches. You can work in finance, food manufacturing, food industries, government, horse industry. I kind of already mentioned zoo. And then, of course, there's the wine and poultry industry. So lots of options. So we're going to kind of go under each of those categories a little bit, the main ones, and talk about some more jobs that fall in. So animal science salaries will vary. There's probably a pretty large difference, vary by career, whether you're in research or whether you are, farming or working in the government. And each job is going to come with its own benefits. So some jobs, particularly sales jobs, may have commission pay or bonuses. And some jobs may actually provide a car and cell phone for you if that's needed, if you're doing a lot of travel. So in animal production, there are jobs that will allow you to work with the animals. So you can be a farmer, a rancher, broiler manager, hatchery manager, animal health supervisor, welfare specialist, a contract producer, maybe for a larger company, livestock herdsman, dairy herdsman, livestock manager, feedlot operator, horse unit manager, or kennel manager. Those are just kind of a few. There's still a lot that could fall under that. So in the agricultural service sector, you have agricultural sales and marketing jobs. So you could be a nutrition consultant, which is something I'm actually kind of thinking about maybe doing later in my career. You could be a livestock production specialist, an urban pet food distributor, And as I've kind of been looking for jobs, there are actually a lot of jobs for urban pet food distribution. Animal livestock marketer, salesperson for food or feed ingredients, equipment, semen and genetics, and animal health products. You could also do international market development, or you could be a sales specialist. So some other jobs within the agricultural service sector are that you could work for an agricultural organization, such as a national and state beef, dairy, pork, and poultry organization. So those, or actually I'll talk about a little bit, I think on the next slide, where I kind of talk more in detail about those. Another area is agricultural and other animal communications. So you could be a feature article writer for an agricultural magazine, an advertising development specialist, or a marketer. Yeah, so some of the agricultural organizations, just to name a few, there are a lot that you could potentially work for. There's the National Cattlemen's Association, the National Pork Producers Council, National Chicken Council, National Dairy Herd Improvement Association. So just to name some of the big ones. The job responsibilities that you would have with these agricultural organizations, if you work for them, would be to serve farmer members, promote their products, educate the public, which is a big one because a lot of people are unaware of where their food comes from and what it takes to raise that animal or produce that crop. So you would educate the public on products and production systems and how that's done. You could also work in government agencies and with legislators to protect the interest of agriculture when they're making laws and bills and things like that that would affect agriculture. Animal breeding and health is another big job category. So there's animal breeding, genetics, and DNA testing. That uses the marriage of population genetics and molecular genetics, so getting a little bit into biology there. But that's really important. Those people use DNA testing to assure that correct breeding actually did occur. And you can find jobs in livestock, horses, and companion animals as well. For those of you who kind of want to focus on dogs and cats. So in animal breeding and health, that's something else that you might work in would be the production of drugs using transgenic animals. And in case you don't know what a transgenic animal is, that's an animal whose genome has been deliberately altered to carry genes from other species. So they can be used fairly often in the production of drugs and things like that. So another industry is the animal health, biotechnology, and pharmaceutical industry. So in that industry, there's the development of new drugs, vaccines, as well as diagnostic tests. And the development of those has led to significant growth in this area. So there are a lot of companies that are working in this field, and there are a lot of job opportunities in this area. So some pharmacologic and biotechnological advances are the results of extensive research and testing laboratories. So a lot of research is going on. If you are doing these labs that have research, you have your lab technicians, your research assistants, research coordinators. So there are a lot of jobs that fall into that one category. Animal health, biotechnology, and pharmaceutical industry has shown similar growth to the animal health industry. And there are many opportunities for animal scientists, which I kind of just touched on just a second ago. So there are jobs in laboratory animal care. You could get a job as a lab technician or as a research scientist. You could also be a product safety and quality assurance manager or employee or a manager, or you could work in sales. So there's a lot of different options just within that one industry. Business and finance is also another area within animal science that you could potentially go into. So you could work in banking, insurance, or real estate companies. Just a few examples, you could be an agricultural loan officer, a financial analyst, financial representative. You could also work with farmers as agricultural finance advisors or small business management advisors. So if finance and numbers and managing all of that is your thing, you can go into that area. You might want to work in the dairy industry. I know I think a few of you in your introductions have talked about that you work with dairy cows, so you might already be in this industry. So you could be a herdsman, a dairy manager, a field representative for dairy cooperatives or breeders. You could work in the animal health part of the dairy industry, a nutrition consultant for dairy nutrition. You could be a certified artificial inseminator. You could be in charge of quality assurance and control. That's always a big one because animal products go into the food chain and they're fed to humans. So quality assurance and control is a huge thing. Lots of jobs in that area. You could also maybe be part of new product research. So lots of different options. So you could also maybe work in education if you like to teach and you like to work with others and you're really good at explaining your knowledge and sharing that passion for what you do. You have options there. You could teach high school. You could run youth 4-H programs. You could teach at a community college or a four-year college or a research university. And a lot of four-year colleges are research universities, so those kind of go together there. But so lots of opportunities there based on what education level you achieve will kind of depend on where you can actually teach. But lots of options. So the feed industry is also a huge one because animals need to eat. So we need someone to run the feed mills and work at the feed mills and handle all the regulation and quality assurance that comes along with the feed. So you have sales and service jobs in that industry. Animal nutritionist also kind of falls in the feed industry. There are different jobs in animal nutrition in other areas, but obviously the feed mill is going to be making the diets that are provided by the animal nutritionist and the formulator, so they kind of fall in. You could manage research. So research in feed mills could be research on how long do we need to mix a diet before it's uniform. How much of this product do we need to add? So different research areas there. You could be a feed mill manager, so you would oversee the general operations of the feed mill and be responsible for everything. You could be a feed company manager that would work with the feed mill. You could do pet food research and manufacturing, and you could also work in feed quality control and assurance. And so just to show you a picture of a feed mill, this one on the slide is actually Southern States Feed Mill in North Carolina that I've actually visited through one of my feed mill classes. And so they actually produce a wide range of livestock feed as well as companion animal. So the way that their system is set up is very different from how a feed mill for like Smithfield or Tyson would be set up, where they're really making diets for kind of just a few species. So they don't have quite as much going on as like the Southern States feed mill. So that's also something else to consider when you go into the feed industry. You could very well work with pet food or livestock or both. So. You might want to work for the government. There are a lot of jobs in the USDA in livestock marketing, livestock forecasting, reporting, environmental regulation, animal health, disease control, animal and meat inspection, be a production credit officer, and there's also, you could give public information together with positions for state departments of agriculture as well. You might want to work in international agriculture through international assistance projects, such as those that are under the U.S. Agency for International Development or the World Bank, the USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service, or FAS. You could potentially take a job in the horse industry, and I know quite a few of you are already working with horses and love horses, so you might like this slide. You could work with breeding farm management, equipment sales and service. You might be a farrier. You could work at the farm as a manager. Nutrition consultant, as you see, that one kind of pops up because all the animals need to eat, so that's a really big one. You might work in pharmaceutical sales and kind of target the horse industry. You could be a riding instructor or a trainer. And you could also have careers related to racehorse management or training. So there's also, along with animal production, there's the meat industry, because the end goal of producing animals is to have meat and have a product that you're going to give to the consumers. So you might work for a meat packer, processor, or related industries. There are a lot of jobs that come along with this. So you could be a manager. You might work in product and process development. You might work with new foods development, in purchasing, Quality control and assurance, that pops up again because that's a huge one. You have to make sure that the meat is safe and good quality and not going to have some sort of disease or bacteria or anything like that being passed on to people. So that's a big important job. And that kind of goes along with food safety. There's lots of regulations and things that you would need to know to work there. And then technical and consumer services, and advertising, merchandising, and sales. So just to kind of give you a summary of some of the things that we just talked about, you could work directly with animals and farmers. You might work in animal nutrition or feed. You could work in other animal-related industries. If you decide to be a researcher, either at a production farm or at a university, you could either lead or participate in research. You might be a communicator or a teacher. Or you could be a medical professional, such as a veterinarian, a veterinary technician. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but animal science degrees, bachelor degrees and other degrees kind of set you up for other medical schools as well, so not just limited to vet there. But at this point, I'll stop really quick. Does anybody have any questions or anything so far? Everybody's good on what I've covered so far? All right, and I will keep moving. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about education and what that will kind of give you as far as, you know, what you need to do and what you would need to learn to be able to go for the job that you want. So post-secondary education, which is anything after high school, is an ideal time for you to add to your list of accomplishments, both in the classroom as well as extracurricular activities. It's a good time for you to show and develop organizational skills. You can work with faculty members on research if there are any in your area that are doing research in agriculture at all. You could also find outside employment in your area of interest. That's always a good way to gain experience. And that will also, all of that will expand your consciousness of the subject and your confidence in what you're learning and your abilities. Do you have a question? I'm hearing like a buzzing. No.
My cell phone is buzzing somewhere.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was like trying to notify me that someone like had a question.
Yeah, no.
Okay, no worries. I've got the penny going crazy on my end, so don't feel bad. So a little bit more about post-secondary education. So during your time as a student, you will learn how to study and accomplish tasks, work with different people from different backgrounds with different skill sets. You'll become very aware of your strengths and weaknesses. I know I definitely did in college. I really learned what I was good at and what I was not very good at and what interested me and what didn't. So when you're seeking a career, you want to build on the strengths that you know that you have. So find areas in which you are highly motivated because those are the areas that you're going to be passionate about. And money is important, but so is being happy. So you don't want to take a job that you just absolutely hate and you don't want just because it pays well. So just something to think about there. So you might go to professional school after you do maybe like a 4-year degree. So of course the big one in animal science is vet school. So with vet school, your grades during your education in college are extremely important. That's one of the main things that they will look at, and you need a certain GPA to be competitive. Usually I was actually pre-vet to start before I learned about grad school and options there. Usually I'm told above a 3.6 is what they look at and what they consider competitive, and above a 3.8 you're competitive. So if you're focused on vet school, definitely study hard because grades are the main thing. They also look at volunteer hours at vet clinics, so they want to see that you've got some hands-on experience at different vet clinics and that you've really proven that that's your goal and that you're working to get to that goal. Vet school has specific course requirements, so when you are working in college with the idea of going to vet school, make sure that you have these course requirements in your schedule. So just to name a few, you'll need anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, or so those are some of the things that you need to include there. So always make sure that you need. And then like I mentioned earlier, an animal science degree, a general bachelor's degree, will actually give you the requirements to apply to med school. So some of the classes that you need for med school and vet school overlap. So if you are on the pre-vet track, then you will have taken some of those same classes. So you could then apply to become a medical doctor, or you could also apply to become a dentist. So if you get to the end of that animal science degree and you just decide, vet school's not for you, you maybe want to work with people, you have plenty of options there.
So for the volunteer hours at vet clinics, is there any specific amount of hours that you know of?
Yes, they won't rule you out if you don't have those, but typically I believe, I don't want to tell you wrong, but I believe it was somewhere in the 800 to 1300 range. That could have changed, and it also varies depending on the vet school. So one thing I would say is if you want to go to vet school, start looking now at the vet schools that you want to apply to and see what their requirements are. Or at least what I think would help is if you look at, they'll give kind of statistics on their previous class that they accepted. And so they'll tell you what the average GPA was that they accepted, what the average amount of volunteer hours was that they accepted, and things like that. So they might, of course you can still apply, but there are a certain number of hours that would be competitive.
Right.
I think somewhere around that number. I know when I was pre-vet, a lot of the students there already had, some of them close to 2,000 hours. They'd been volunteering since they were born. So I would say if you're interested in vet school, any hours that you can get would be really beneficial. Either hours at a small animal clinic or riding with a large animal veterinarian. Anything like that you can get exposed to would look really good on a vet school application.
Would it count that I work at a vet's office? Would those hours of my working still actually count toward that, do you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, and if you actually work there, I mean, that's actually, I would say, better than volunteering because you actually have a job there. So, that would definitely count. And so another thing I would maybe recommend, and that I was told when I was kind of thinking about going to vet school, is to document things that you have learned or things that you've done. Like if you've, helped out with a spay, or you've given vaccinations, or you've seen that, just kind of like whenever you get home, jot down some things that you did that day. Because that may be good to put in like a letter or a application for vet school that you have actually seen and worked on these procedures or things.
Okay.
Leanne, if I could jump in for a minute, I'm going to ask a question or two of you. You've come through the system 25 years since I came through the system. I was an animal science undergraduate, and a lot of the people I went to school with, they wanted to go to vet school, but you correct me if it's not the same now, but in Virginia, there's only the one vet school. It's Virginia, Maryland, some vet school. The name's on this class here. And it's a partnership between the state of Maryland and the state of Virginia.
Yes.
And back in the day, they only had like 100 slots that they would fill each year. Half of them were allotted to Maryland residents. Well, at the most, half of them would come from Maryland, half of them would come from Virginia. But they kind of had a goal of like a third of the Virginia slots would go to out-of-staters, a third of the Maryland slots would go to out-of-staters. So they may only, in that vet school, there may only be like 35 slots for Virginia people to get into vet school.
Yeah.
Is it still basically the same?
It is still basically the same. It is extremely competitive. They told us when I started at Tech, it was kind of 85% rule. 85% of the animal science people were female. 85% of those wanted to go to vet school, and 85% of those wanted to work with horses. And they actually told us in my intro class, most of you will learn that either that's not what you want to do or that you're not because it gets crazy. And there is the main thing, and the main reason why vet school is so competitive is that there's pretty much one in not even every state in the U.S., but for the states that do have them, there's pretty much one in that state.
Yeah, the one in Raleigh with NC State, that's the only one in North Carolina, and their numbers are about the same. And for perspective, when I was there, each class of animal science students at Tech alone was about 100 people.
Yeah.
And you figure at least half of them were wanting a vet school slot, so you have at least 50 animal science people from Tech alone. And then you probably had a bunch of people that were biology majors, so you probably had 50 to 100 biology majors from Tech. You got 150 people from Tech alone going in those 35 slots. And then you have biology majors from James, all the other schools around there. You may end up competing against like 400 people to get 30 some odd slots. So I think Leanne mentioned earlier, it's like, they tell you you've got to have like a 3.6 grade point or 3.4 grade point average. But if you've got less than 3.8, you better have a darn good excuse of that you have participated in every student activity known to humankind, kind of thing. So I know a whole lot of people that they spend every Friday and Saturday night, they're in their dorm room studying instead of going out and partying like I was. And they they still didn't get into vet school.
Yep.
And I mean, that's just the level of, I tell people all the time, it's easier to become a doctor than it is to become a veterinarian because there isn't as many schools, there isn't as many slots. So, it's very telling here that, animal science, you got to do the same thing. We used a human anatomy and physiology like animal anatomy class. It's the same science, the same math, and as a vet, you actually have to know more because you got the comparative anatomy from all the different animals. So, a medical school would have no problem taking an animal science major because they know you got game because you've seen everything that the biology majors would have seen coming in. I'm not trying to depress you or horrify you there, but I'm just trying to give that little inspiration and motivation of if you're wanting to go to vet school, you need to find your A game and run with that A game.
Yeah.
Early and often because there's not every state has, and the states that do usually only have one.
Yeah.
Tom, can I add a little something?
Oh, John, go ahead.
A different generation at the time I was at Tech. I think Georgia was the only one that had a vet school.
Yeah,
they had a collaborative arrangement with Georgia.
And right now, Georgia only accepts one out-of-state applicant, pretty much. It's like 1 or 2 is what I saw in the stats for out-of-state.
Yeah, which they just had built the school just a matter of a few years before I got there. It was still new. I mean, there's still dirt around the building and it wasn't all grass. So, But anyway, just thought I'd throw that one out there for perspective here.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really important to point out. And it's kind of one of those things where I wanted to be a vet because I also didn't really realize what other jobs were out there other than becoming a farmer or being a vet. And I was like, well, I love animals. I have to be a vet, right? And then I got there and I learned about graduate school. And so I immediately stopped the pre-vet track and my last year actually switched towards grad school. But it is important to note that, and like Tom said, I went out on weekends. I had fun in college. I studied, but I also didn't stay in every weekend and study intensely, which is really, if you want to go to vet school, from what I've seen, you almost have to give up that part of that side of college. You're just there to study, and you really, like he said, you have to bring your A game. Because I know students that had 3 6s, extracurricular activities, and unbelievable amount of hours that did not even get an interview their first time applying. So most of the students that I've heard that actually got in were 3.8, 3.9, 4.0 grade point average, or they won't look at you.
Yes. I was glad I was dumb enough that I knew better than to try.
Yeah, I was just like, and I took organic chemistry, did it for me, and I was like, yeah, graduate school, I'm not doing this.
I avoided organic chemistry. That was one of the main reasons.
Yeah, I took it, and then at the end of the semester, I was like, yeah, no, this is not happening. But yeah, so I think that's really important to point out because, I did get a very rude awakening my first class at Tech when they were like, most of you are not going to get in. Most of you are not going to go to vet school. And it does sound very depressing, but the reason that I think Tom brought it up as well is just you have to work so hard and sacrifice a lot of things if that is your dream. But really don't get disheartened because there are a lot of other opportunities that will allow you to work with animals. And you don't necessarily have to be a vet. There are so many other opportunities for you out there if vet school doesn't work out or if you change your mind. And so that's part of what we're talking about in this lecture. So there is a good outlook. There's a lot of things that you can do if you decide that it's not for you, and there's no shame in that. I did that and decided I wanted to do something else, and I love what I'm doing now. So, yep, good point, Tom.
Yes, and the other thing is keep your options open.
Yes.
Don't just get tunnel vision. Keep your options open. Keep looking around.
Keep your options open and have a backup. And a lot of people, if vet school is really what you want to do, you may not get in the first time. So you might have a backup of, either getting more hours and working as a vet tech, or maybe going to get another degree to kind of add to your resume and boost your grades. And then people apply again. Some people that have applied to vet school 7 or 8 times before they got it. So if that's really your dream, keep at it. But if it's something that you kind of don't really have to do, there are definitely other options for you.
I have a question. What is the requirement to become a farrier?
The requirement to become a farrier, I believe there is like I want to say like farrier school. I don't know if it's like
there are at least 3 farrier schools here in Virginia. You can try Danny Ward's. It's not that far from the Alberta campus, I would say. You can go take like a 12-week course to get your certificate to say you are a farrier and you know what you're doing to trim and be able to shod. There's just a basic class, or you can take the other one to be able to shod horses as well. You do not have to be licensed or certified to be a farrier, but there are schools around the 3 that you can go to become a farrier.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that. Because I know there are farrier schools, but you know way more about that than I did. So.
I'm currently a farrier, so.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, thanks for answering that.
Whoever asked that, find me on Blackboard and ask me whatever you want.
That was Tyler.
Tyler? Okay, show your present.
Sorry.
All right.
Any more questions on vet school or anything like that while we're on this slide? Okay, if you have any more later, feel free to stop me and ask, or you can ask at the end, whatever you want to do. So now I'm going to talk about graduate programs. This is kind of my bread and butter, if you will. So graduate programs are something else, another career path that you can pursue. Like I mentioned earlier, I did not know that graduate was a thing until my second to last year of my undergrad degree, when the graduate program coordinator came to talk to my class and talked about research and the different areas and things you can do. And I got really, really excited about that. So you all are lucky. You're actually learning about graduate school way before I did. So if that's something that you're interested in, you will be more prepared than I was. So graduate school is, I'll talk a little bit in a couple of slides about the different degrees. But the benefits of graduate school, as opposed to maybe some of the other options, are that you can kind of tailor your program, match your interests and your career goals. For many careers, a graduate degree is useful, and for some careers that you want, a graduate degree is actually essential. They require that. So when I say you can tailor your program to match your interests and career goals, I was able, through my graduate degrees, to focus on animal nutrition. So whereas in vet school, vets kind of get a broad picture of genetics, nutrition, reproduction, all of that. Graduate school will actually allow you to go really deep into one of those. So if you really are interested in breeding and genetics, you can pursue breeding and genetics. You can even pursue breeding and genetics in cattle. You can get as specific as you want. Like I'm working with nutrition, and I've been kind of on the swine track, so I work mainly with swine nutrition. So it's really, really good that if you find a class in your undergrad that you really like and you find that you can pursue a graduate degree in that. Also, I would say if there's a class that maybe you don't enjoy, don't shut it out, because I actually hated nutrition more than all of my other classes. And then somehow, once I started kind of looking at graduate school, I ended up taking nutrition classes, and I really, really liked it. The graduate school classes were more in depth, but they really got me more interested. And now I love nutrition, and kind of surprises me that I hated it so much in undergrad. But graduate classes are a lot better. You have fewer students, and you can really learn a lot more detail about a subject you're interested in. So that's good. So you could get careers in research, education, and in government, and they either require or at least recommend that you have a graduate degree. And a graduate degree may also be required to work at regulatory agencies, such as the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. So just some degrees that you can get in graduate school. So you could get a Master of Business Administration or an MBA if you want to kind of stay on the business side of things and kind of work with business and even finance if that's what you want to do. You could get a Master of Science, which I finished in 2014. And that would allow you to have careers in science such as a lab technician, extension agent, educator, nutritionist, or geneticist. And so one thing I'll also mention with the Master of Science, especially here at NC State and at any school that offers a degree in animal science, there are two different types of master's degrees that you can actually get. So at NC State, it's actually called an MAS versus an MS. MS is a Master of Science, which in addition to taking your classes, you will also do a research project. So you'll do an animal research trial, or if you're reading in genetics, you might be looking at data from, lots of generations breeding, things like that. But so that is your Master of Science degree, and that will require you to write a thesis, which is essentially a long paper that's a summary of your research. And then you will present that to your committee, which will be like 3 faculty members. And then they will ask you questions, and then they decide if you get that degree. The MAS, which is what it is at NC State, and other schools might have a different name for it, but it's a non-thesis master's. And that is actually a master's that you can get without doing research. You just take more classes. And I know at NC State and some at Tech as well, you can do that as completely online. And so if you have other commitments or you work or you have things going on, the Master of Science non-thesis could be a really good option because you will take more classes, but you have the option of most of it being online and you don't have to do research. So that's a really, really good option. With the Master of Science thesis, you actually take fewer classes. Because you're doing the research, they kind of level out and you will only take maybe 3 classes a semester. Whereas with the non-thesis, you're going to be taking a full course load. If you want to go on and get a PhD, I highly recommend, and some places actually require that you do the thesis master's, and then you can go on to get a doctorate, which is what I'm working on now, and that can lead to careers in research. You could lead your own laboratory or team at universities, the NCDA, CDC, or National Institute of Health. You could be running research in any of those areas. You could work in technical services, or you could be a professor at a community college or university, whichever one you prefer. And that's just a few. I'm looking for jobs now for when I finish my PhD, and there is a wide range of areas that you can work in and that people are figuring out that they actually need people with that degree to work in. So it's very, very open as far as what your options are there if you pursue a graduate degree. So when choosing a graduate program, you want to explore what's available. So look at the different schools and what options they have for the degree. Do they offer a non-thesis? Is it online? Which one you want to do. You also want to look at the quality and reputation of the program as well as the school. Because you're going to be known for being a graduate of that school, and if you're going for a job against someone that went to a school that's more well known in that area, that might play in. So you make sure that you go to a really good school and get into a good program. Location is also a big factor. If you don't want to move halfway across the country, look at schools that are close to where you want to be. And look at their financial packages that are offered. One thing that I will kind of say that's really, really great about grad school is that you can actually, if you work hard enough and you want to do research, you can probably get that paid for. There's a good chance for masters, it's pretty likely, depending on the school. For PhD, it's almost a given. But you can actually work as a teaching assistant or a research assistant while you are in school. And so it's a little bit more, but it's not that bad. And they will actually pay for your tuition. And I also get health insurance covered, and then you get a stipend every 2 weeks. You get paid every 2 weeks. So it's not a bad deal. Compared to some other options with animal science where if you're not having school paid for, you come out in debt. Graduate school gives you the option to get paid and have your school paid for if you qualify for those financial packages. So that's something that I would really advise that you look into because assistantships is definitely a great way you don't always make that much money, but it's been really nice to have my school pretty much paid for as far as my graduate school goes. You also want to look at your advisor's reputation. So when you graduate from, what you'll do if you do research, you'll work in a lab, and so you'll work with one main advisor. And you want to look at the reputation of that person. Because if they have a bad reputation, or they're known for bad science, or putting out students that don't know what they're doing, people may assume that of you out of their lab. So you want to make sure that your advisor has a good reputation, and that he's fairly well known in the industry that you want to go into, and that he's doing research in an area you're interested in. Because you don't want to get into a lab and then he's not doing anything that, or he or she is not doing any research that you're interested in. You also want an advisor that you get along with, and I will definitely stress that. Definitely, if you're pursuing grad school, look at different advisors that are available. Go meet with them, talk to their labs, and see how they are as an advisor. My master's advisor was a really great scientist, but he was not great at mentoring. So that was something that I kind of had to deal with during my master's. So make sure you talk to the students that are currently working with that professor, and they'll really give you the lowdown of how that professor actually is. So graduate program requirements, we talked a little bit about vet school requirements. Graduate program requirements, you don't necessarily have to take the exact same classes that you do for vet school. So vet school requires physics, requires organic chemistry. You don't have to take those for graduate school, which is a big bonus if you hate chemistry, like I do. So you can kind of just take like science option classes. I took a lot of biology courses because biology is my thing in chemistry. You will have to take a graduate record exam, or the DRE. It's basically just like an upgraded version of the SAT. It's just a little bit harder because they've expected that you've completed a 4-year degree at that point. The GPA is really important to get into grad school. Usually they require at least a 3.0. So it's not as competitive and crazy as vet school, where you pretty much need a 3.8 to be competitive. Grad school just puts that requirement on there. Of course, the higher your GPA is, the better chance you have of getting in, but they just require at least a 3.0. And then, like I said, you want to contact an advisor that you worked with prior to actually applying, because when they see your application come across the committee, they can say, oh, this person has contacted me. Yes, I want to accept this student. And they can kind of vouch for you in the application process. So before I move on to resume building, does anyone have any questions about grad school, what that entails and what you might be doing and things like that? Because I can really shed some light on that if you're interested. No questions? No one's interested in grad school? All right. Well, if you think of any, let me know. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about resume building. So you want your resume to kind of tell a story. So the best resumes are kind of those that show that you've had this job in mind, and here's the list of things that you've done to accomplish or get you to that goal. So resumes that kind of have, jobs or experience in a similar area might be, might look a little better than a job where you've kind of like done this over here and then you did something not related, and you kind of want it to kind of tell a story that you've been working towards this goal, whatever job you're applying to. So you'll be able to hone your skills and talents in college. Another good thing that you can do in college to kind of boost your resume is to take leadership roles in animal science and other student organizations. An example that your book gave was Block and Bridle, which is a good one. I was actually in Block and Bridle at Virginia Tech, and it was a really good club full of college students that I got to network with. We got to work with faculty. We put on livestock sales. We had a booth at the Virginia State Fair. So lots of things there. Those always look great on a resume. Running an activity, there's an activity going on. You volunteer to help lead that or put that on. You can put that on a resume. Learning about a different culture and study abroad. That's always a good option too. If you have the money, that's really expensive, so I never was able to do that. Assisting people and organization by service learning, so just volunteering to help out with anything kind of in your area. And then conducting research with a faculty member. That's something that you do in grad school, but you can also do in undergrad. I started volunteering in a lab in undergrad under a faculty member to see if I was even interested in research. So that's something that you can put on your resume, whether you pursue that or not. So internships are a huge part, I think, of the eventual career building process and job process. Internships, basically, I'm sure all of you know what it is. You kind of just take a job for maybe like 3, 6, even 12 months, and you get to gain experience. A lot of companies will hire from people that have been interns. So they're really beneficial to kind of check out an area that you want or gain more experience. So advantages, like I said, experience. It's a great resume builder. Networking, you get to meet people that work at that company, and they might know people that might be looking for someone in the future. You gain references to put on your resume. It gives you something to talk about in an interview, and it will give you a competitive edge over other candidates that are applying for the same job but did not do an internship. And you can get to know a prospective employer, and then they get to know you as well. So they have seen how you work and how you do things, and so it could lead to a full-time position. Internships are very, very important. I've done a couple. One of them was at a zoo. I don't ever really plan to work at a zoo, but it was still in the animal science area. So it's always something interesting that I can talk about. So I highly recommend internships. So when you're applying for jobs, check your school's career counseling center. They can be a really helpful resource. Make a list of companies that offer internships and jobs to graduates that are in your area of study. Conduct research on the company for an assessment of what they want and how you can assist it. And then prepare an application. So you want a customized resume with a cover letter. So what I mean by customized resume is you may have experiences in a different area, but if you want a job in a specific area, you want to kind of put those experiences that mostly relate to that area kind of at the top or the forefront of your resume. So just for a quick example, I have research experience and I have teaching experience. So if I'm applying for a research job, my research experience goes at the forefront of my application. And then if I'm applying for a teaching job, it's the other way around. So that's really, really important because you want them to first see what makes you qualified for that position. I've been told that they'll spend about 8 seconds looking at your resume if there's a pile of them. So you have, a small window of time to actually capture someone's attention with your resume. So you want, the focus to be what your skills are that pertain to that job. Someone have a question? On my screen switch. Okay. So when you're actually preparing the application, like I just said, you want your resume to be customized for a specific job and an individual employer. And your resume is typically a one-page summary of your education, work history, any awards or anything you may have won, publications, things like that. You can kind of put that on a one page. It can be longer if you just have a lot of experience pertaining to that job. But I've kind of been told keep it to 1 page or 2 pages. The cover letter is important. Not all job applications will require it, but it's always good to do anyway, and some will actually require it. So you want to explain why you're well suited for this position, and you want to pay attention to the skills that you have that are transferable to the position, and you want to really highlight those. And this is a time to really kind of advocate for yourself, as I was told during the interview process. If you don't really advocate for yourself and talk about your accomplishments and your skills, who else is going to do it? So this is really the time to play up your strengths and your skill set. And so another thing that some jobs may require, but not always, is a CV, which I actually, again, didn't really learn that much about until college. So a CV is longer than a resume. It can be several pages long, and it can actually give more explanation about your degrees and your experiences, awards, publications, certifications, pretty much anything that pertains to that job you can put on a CV. It's expected that a CV is going to be longer than a resume. So it really gives you an area.
I have a question regarding the resume thing. Would any extracurricular activities we did in high school that pertain to the position we're applying for be something useful to put on a resume?
Yes, I would say if you are looking for a job right after a bachelor's degree, I would say definitely include things that you did in high school. But you'll also, by that point, what they'll mainly look at is going to be the things that you did during your bachelor's degree. If you're applying right out of high school, then definitely include that. Some things like FFA, or if you were in like National Honor Society, anything like that, I would definitely say put on there.
All right.
Yeah,
I
once
was
you
just wondering because I'm actually looking into eventually potentially getting into the horse industry, and I did a lot of work with horses during my time in the FFA, and I was wondering if that would be applicable for anything in the future.
yeah, I would definitely put that on there. Yeah, I think that would be really good to put on there. Any other questions? Okay. So when you're preparing for the interview, you want to demonstrate that you have knowledge about the employer and the company. So I would recommend that you visit their website and learn as much about them as you can, especially if it's a larger company, learn kind of broadly what they do and then more what they do in your area. Someone have a question? Read their annual report. And then, like I said earlier, customize your strengths to the employer's needs. So how can you be an asset to the company in that position, and what are your transferable skills? So in preparing for the interview, you want to think of possible questions and how you would answer. So some of those questions may be, and I kind of came up with these from the book, and also I'm going through the interview process now for jobs once I graduate. Tell me about yourself. Why did you choose this company? What interests you about the position? What do you find interesting about this position compared to other positions in this area? Things like that. So it's really good to think about those questions so that you're not caught off guard when they ask you something. You want to dress in clean, business-appropriate clothes, and you want to be on time. It's always good to be a little bit early, but I've actually heard you don't want to be too early, like no more than 10 or 15 minutes, because if you're too early, then the person that is doing something then may feel like they're being rushed to kind of come meet with you. So that's kind of one thing that I learned, because everyone stresses be on time, but you don't want to be so early that you're kind of throwing off the rest of their schedule earlier. And then a big one that I would say is manage your social media. If you're applying for a job and you've got embarrassing pictures of you doing things maybe you shouldn't be doing on Facebook, take those down, or at least like hide your profile as much as you can, because the human resources departments will actually look at Facebook accounts, Instagram, anything. And I've actually had a scholarship that I applied for actually go through my Instagram and like my photos. So I had known that they were going through all of my stuff. So that's a big one. It is kind of an area for you to express your individuality and, be social, but companies will look at that. So if you're applying for a job, I highly suggest that you tailor your social media accordingly. And along the lines of social media, have any of you heard of LinkedIn?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool. So LinkedIn is for those of you that haven't, it's kind of like maybe Facebook for like business type things. So you can actually put on there kind of like, your education, your work experience, and things like that. You can list all of that on your LinkedIn page, and employers can actually search, and you might pop up if you put that you have skills in agriculture. And so I've actually had a couple people find me that way through my LinkedIn profile. So that's a really good thing that you could start either now or, about a year or so out from applying to jobs. Get a LinkedIn profile. You can connect with other people that have LinkedIn profiles, and through that you can find other people and really network. So it's a really good avenue to have. And some people actually now like if you put your LinkedIn address on the resume so that they can go to your LinkedIn page. So that's just something to think about. And if anyone has any questions about that, feel free to shoot me.
Which I was just going to jump in for a second. First, to advertise the Agriculture Human Resources class that we will be offering in the spring, taught by me. But we go through this in a whole lot more detail. But the whole asking questions in an interview, I can't tell you how huge it is. The way to think about applying for a job is think about it like you're dating somebody. This is your first date for somebody and you're looking to get married.
Yep.
You're going to be with this company 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, hopefully for many, many years, right? You wouldn't get married to somebody if you didn't ever ask them any questions, right? You want to get to know that person because you not only want to convince them that you're the right person for them, but you need to be convinced they're the right person for you. Because a lot of people are miserable because they're in the wrong job, the dead-end job at a place that just is terrible. You need to find that kind of thing out. So you need to go in there and ask questions, because by asking the questions, you show them not just that you know a little bit about the company, but you're interested, you care, you're motivated, you've been thinking about things, you've got something in your brain, and you know what it is that you want, know what it is that you're looking for. Like Carolyn, for instance, she has a daughter. Yeah, she's got a daughter, so she needs to be asking questions about, is there anything with regards to benefits for my daughter? Can I occasionally, is it okay to get off of work a day if my daughter has something to school? She needs to know these things. And she doesn't just need to, okay, I'm just happy to be here. Please, please, please give me a job and I'll take whatever paycheck you want. She needs to know these things. But so many of us, we've been conditioned to just think that we should be grateful that they gave us the interview, and we're just there to beg, and we're going to lie to them and tell them exactly what we think they want to hear. And those are some of the worst mistakes that we can make. Ask your questions, find out what it is that you really need to know. If you really care about people, try to find out whether they're bless you, whoever that was. But if you really care about people, you need to find out just how evil they are. You need to ask your questions. And because how many of you, if you went out on a first date with somebody and they were just sitting there talking about themselves and never asked you anything about you? Okay, y'all are right now just saying, oh, that's so annoying. Would you go out with that person a second time? No. Yeah. So if you go into job interview with that same kind of behavior, what do you think are your odds you're going to get the job? Ideally, you want the interviewer to be talking more than you. If you can make that happen, you'll get the job. Just that way, take the Ag Human Resources class next semester if you want to learn a whole lot more about it. That's just a piece of it.
Is that what I'm going into?
Probably. Yes.
Is there any one of them that's called humanities?
As human resources, and the humanities is something different. But anyway.
Okay, well then, I totally be supposed to.
Okay. Yes, you did. So anyway, that was just that bit. I'm done.
Yeah, no, that's great. You actually hit on a couple things on my next slide, so I'll be.
Of course I did.
So great, thank you. So in the interview, you want to give the impression that you're professional and that you're suitable for the job and that you would be an asset to the employer. And you want to be confident and assertive, but not arrogant. You want to talk about your abilities and you really want to advocate for yourself, but you don't want to come off as arrogant, like you're way better than you actually are. So in the interview, when you're answering questions, the important things to keep in mind that will always answer in a professional manner, and the employer may actually pause after questions to kind of give you a chance to keep talking. And I've definitely seen this in some of the interviews that I've had. They'll ask you something, and then even after you kind of give an answer, they'll kind of wait a little bit because they want you to kind of add to that. And if it's like an awkward silence. So keep that in mind. They're just trying to get you to talk more. They might ask you a random question to kind of gauge how you're going to respond to it. So it may be a completely off-the-wall question that you're not prepared for. So just make sure that you kind of keep your cool. And be careful not to say anything disadvantageous to you. So you want to be honest, but try to paint yourself in the best light that you can. So, don't say anything like that's going to make you look really bad. Just some likely questions that you may get in an interview, and I've definitely gotten a lot of these, is give an example of a difficult situation or person that you had to work with and how you dealt with it. That's a big one. I've been asked that in every interview, actually. What are your short and long-term career goals? Give an example of a time you set a goal and how you achieved it. I've gotten that as well. How do you manage your time? That's a big one that I get a lot. What are your strengths and weaknesses, and how do you deal with pressure? And so when they're asking you about your weaknesses also, you want to be upfront, but also what I've kind of been told and what I've learned is that when you're discussing your weaknesses, kind of discuss them in a way that makes them sound better. So, for example, if like your weakness is that you're not very good at time management, you may not necessarily want to admit that, but you could say, well, I'm maybe not the best with time management, but in order to help myself, I keep an agenda and I check it and do these things. Because you're going to have to say that you have a weakness. No employer is going to believe anyone that comes in and says, oh, I have no weaknesses, I'm a perfect person. That's just not reality. But so try to paint your weaknesses in a better light, and if you say that you have some, which you should, talk about how you're actively dealing with those weaknesses and how you can make them better, if that makes sense. Another question is how you deal with pressure. So I was actually asked in an interview, how do you handle stress? When you're in a stressful situation, do you shut down or do you kind of kick into gear? That's something that they want to look for, especially if you're going to be in a high-stress job. So be prepared for that.
You have a question, Carol?
Yes, it was pertaining to the first question. Is it 3 questions? So how would you answer that first question? Okay, I would answer it that I would go to that particular coworker and talk to them and try to smooth things out. And then if they ask, well, what if that didn't work? Then what would you say? I would come to my manager and speak with my manager about it and let them know that I tried to resolve it before it went up the chain.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a perfectly acceptable answer. You know, to say that you've talked to this person, you have tried to make things better, you've tried to resolve it, you tried to see their side, you tried to compromise with them. If that person wasn't willing to do that, then really you kind of have to go to someone else at that point. So I think that's a perfectly acceptable answer. And I've actually had situations where that has had to be my answer. So, you know, they understand that not everyone that you work with is going to be wonderful, and that sometimes that happens. And if you handle that in a professional manner, then I think that's a good answer.
One other thing, just look at the question. She's asking about question number 1. They're going to ask me, give an example of something that you did deal with. They will go with a hypothetical if they didn't. You know, what would you do if one of your coworkers came up to you with a chainsaw? And, they would occasionally ask that question, but a lot of times they would rather this kind of question. What did you already deal with? You already have experience with doing something, and they want to see the answer, right or wrong, so then they can gauge not only know how to deal with something like that, but just they can learn a lot psychologically about the way you work by the solution that you actually gave to. And then they might follow up with you, well, what would you have done if that didn't work? You know, they can help with that. But most of these questions here are about what have you already done? How do you do things? Not what would you do, but how do you do? Because we don't necessarily know how we would react to a situation until it actually comes for a lot of things. So, anyway, there's that.
And to kind of like echo what Tom said, that's if you have a good example, because and you can even ask. I had an interview where I was like, well, actually give me a second because I've had quite a few difficult situations, so let me pick one that would be a good example. And that's perfectly reasonable. If you need a second to think of the right example, just tell them that. You know, you don't want to say, oh, well, I've never dealt with a difficult situation. You know, just give yourself a minute, think about it, and then give your answer. Because like Tom said, if you don't give an answer, they might hit you with a, well, if this, then what would you do? And it'd be much better for you to answer about something you had done in the past than for them to kind of come up with some crazy scenario.
And it could be, it could be a story about, the time that your dog ran away from home or something, that's a difficult situation. It doesn't have to be a workplace thing.
Right.
You want to get the gauge for how you react to things. And we've led a shelter life and have never had any difficult situations besides dropping your ice cream when you were in kindergarten.
Yeah, it could be a personal thing. Like one of mine was like, I had pigs at the farm and my car broke down and I couldn't get there. So my car breaking down was like a completely non-job related thing, but how did I handle that and how did I make sure that people were there and things like that? So yeah, it could be anything in your life. It doesn't have to be job related. Any other questions on these questions? So a couple things that you don't want to do in an interview. Don't have a weak handshake, like you kind of don't care, you don't want to touch the person. Be pretty firm. Don't criticize your family or your university, previous employers, or the company conducting the interview, because then you're just going to kind of sound like a whiny little baby. In some instances, it may be, I don't want to say necessary, but, in some cases, I've kind of had to explain, like with my advisor, well, he didn't allow me to do that, but if he had, this is how I would have handled the situation. So kind of, if you have to say anything remotely in that area, make it a positive. But try to kind of steer clear of that. Don't look bored. Obviously, don't chew gum or tobacco products. Don't smoke, which I don't imagine anyone would go in and light up in an interview. Don't pick or touch your face or other parts of your body. Sometimes that can be a nervous tick for people. So just try to be aware of that. Don't discuss compensation or benefits unless the interviewer brings it up. And don't bring someone with you. And as far as the don't discuss compensation or benefits, I would say, and I've kind of seen in my interviews, most of the time they will be very forthcoming with it. But at the end of the interview, you can kind of maybe mention it a little bit, I think, but not in a way that like you're already assuming that you've got the job. Just kind of like, well, if I were to get this job, what kind of benefits do you offer? Things like that. I think that's kind of a reasonable question, because like Tom said, you need to ask a lot of questions. And you really need to know.
Yeah, but you don't want to ask it up front because then it sounds like you're only interested in the money.
Right. Yeah. You don't want that to be your question right out of the gate.
Yeah. Ask it at the end. That's good. Good advice there.
Yeah, like I've had an interview where it was like a day-long interview, and then it was like my last question of the day after I had met with everybody and we had exhausted every other topic. And I phrased it, if I was to come on board, what would this be? Not like I already had the job, if that makes sense. So some do's for an interview: practice in front of a mirror if you think that would help. That one wouldn't particularly work for me, but for some people, you may want to practice in a mirror or practice with a friend, especially if you have to give a presentation or something like that. Be punctual, which we kind of talked about earlier. Look professional, firm handshake, professional disposition and posture, so you don't want to be laying back in a chair like you don't care. Make eye contact. That will show that you're really confident. Show respect. Switch off your cell phone. Keep responses clear and to the point. Try not to go off on tangents because they are looking for certain answers and then they want to move on to the next question. Be prepared and don't sound rehearsed. So that's kind of a hard thing to think about. But basically, be prepared for the questions you might answer and think of points that you'd like to hit on rather than a specific script. You don't want to memorize, like if they ask you what your weakness is, you don't want to memorize, my weakness is saying that. You just want to think about what you're going to say. But don't try to go off the script. And then you want to smile and show interest in the company and the position. And then send a thank you letter or an email to the interviewer. Sorry about that. So after the interview, it's always good to follow up and send either a thank you letter or kind of an email is a little bit more popular. So just send an email. Thank you for interviewing me. I really enjoyed meeting you. I look forward to hearing from you. Just those kinds of things. Other interview tips: bring copies of your resume and business cards. Usually, if they already have it, they'll print it out. If you're meeting with more than one person, they will probably already have a copy. But I've been in situations where they did not. There were people that joined the interview late that didn't have a copy, so I was able to look very prepared and say, well, here's a copy of my resume I brought for you. And then also business cards if you have them. Be confident. Be honest about your qualifications. And Tom kind of hit on this earlier. Don't just go in there and say what you think they want to hear you say. You don't want to, you don't want to cut yourself short, but you also want to be honest. You might have something. If you, if there's something that you don't know how to do, and that's part of the job requirement, and they ask you, don't lie and say that you know how to do that, because they will find out very quickly on day one that you lied and that's a bad situation. So definitely be honest and upfront about that. I interviewed for a job where there were parts of the job that I was comfortable with, and there were parts of the job where I thought I might need a little more experience or training, and I told them that. Whether I get that job or whether I don't, I was very abilities that lies. And then, like Tommy said, ask questions. You are also interviewing this company or this person, and you want to make sure that it's a good fit. So make sure that you ask any questions that you might need the answer to be able to determine if that's the place that you want to work. And like you said, interviews are a conversation. It's not just them talking at you, and it's not, just you talking about yourself. It needs to be a conversation. You need to ask questions, and asking questions will show that you're interested. And then, like I said, make sure that not only are you a good fit for the company, but that the company is a good fit for you.
Okay, one other question to ask is, can I see where it is I'm going to be working?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Especially if you could be working in a lab or something like that, or a shop or something, you want to kind of see what it is, get a feel for, is it air conditioned, whatever, that kind of thing. You can see the way the people are, the way they dress, and the way they're acting. You can learn a whole lot just by looking around for a few seconds, and that shows that you're interested as well. And it gets you out of their office in a more relaxed setting too. A lot of times they'll volunteer to take you out there, but if they don't, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Nope. And another question I like is, what do you see the day-to-day kind of life look like for this role? So, some jobs may have flexible hours, and they don't, necessarily keep track of when you come in and when you don't. Others really want you to clock in and clock out. So it's important, what do you expect from a person from this position? Am I going to be mostly in an office? Am I going to also be in the field? What does that look like? Really get a full sense that you can that the job is that you're going to do. Definitely ask questions. Does anybody have any other questions about this PowerPoint or anything else?
I got one that I seen dentistry and vets. Are they both considered together when they pick to go to the schools?
Can you repeat the first part? Sorry, something in vets?
Dentistry and vets.
Oh,
I've
industry.
seen it dentistry, dentist.
Oh,
Two
dentist.
different schools.
Okay, sorry.
Are they two different schools or one school?
Dentistry and vet school?
Yeah.
They're different.
So that way they can be, and you go into that and don't have to go to the vet school.
Right, yeah. You could go to be a dentist for people, and you would go to dental school, or you could go to medical school, or you could go to vet school. So they're all separate.
But in vet school, can you still learn to do the dental work for such as equine, right?
Yeah. You would still learn. Yeah, so like vet school would cover all the different aspects of being a vet. So yeah, you would still learn that. But if you wanted to specifically be a dentist for people, you would go to dental school.
Okay. Yeah, my question, or thinking in the back of my head that I had that was very specific, like equine dentists.
That's going to be somebody that not only went through vet school, got their vet degree, but then they took extra research, did extra classes, did extra stuff to specialize in that. As a vet, you will get the basics.
Yeah.
But
I know
there are people that will specialize in it.
Yeah, I know special equine dentists, but they aren't vets, they aren't licensed. So they don't force to do
Okay.
dental work. They're just
Okay, well, that might be somebody that went the other track and they went through dental school and decided they don't like people, and then they took a couple of animal classes, but they're not qualified to do a lot of the stuff to the animals like you're saying, but they know the teeth thing, and that's what they did.
they can do everything.
So-
They can't like sedate.
So you could potentially become an animal dentist either by going through vet school or dental school, or you're saying.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so I just want to mention that next week, Darren Lee is coming from Fastenal, and he's going to be talking about some job opportunities and about his company and what they do. So he's going to be here at the class next Tuesday on the 5th. So just be ready for him. And then after that, we'll continue with class as normal. I don't know exactly how long he's going to talk, but maybe 20 minutes or so. And then also, I would like to just briefly mention that there is an assignment on Blackboard following this lecture, so you should be able to see it. But I'll just pull it up really quickly.
Wait, while she's pulling that up, I'm glad you reminded me. The guy from Fastenal, it's a hardware company, but they've got stores all over the place, and the guy's been talking to Dixie because they really love hiring our agribusiness students because, you know, a business student, maybe they don't know anything about getting their hands dirty kind of thing, but agriculture students probably do, but then you have the business stuff too. So he's all about getting our agribusiness students. And so he's going to be coming in here, he's going to be talking to this class, he's going to be talking in an accounting class, and probably my econ class Tuesday of next, is it Tuesday? No, Wednesday.
He's coming to this class.
I don't know what day of the week this is.
It's
Yeah.
Wednesday,
Yeah, it's next Tuesday. So he's going to be talking a little bit about his company, but it's just perfect that it's following on the heels of this chapter that y'all talked about. So feel free to be asking questions about any interviewing issues or what are y'all looking for in people that you're wanting to hire. You'll pick his brain. That's why he's going to be wanting to talk up his company, sell his company. Well, you take advantage of him and pick his brain.
Yeah.
Use him.
All right. Can y'all see the assignment pulled up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
For some reason it's kind of bigger. Okay, you can still see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So this is just it's a pretty brief assignment. It's going to be worth 10 points. So basically, I just want you to learn about opportunities in the animal science industry on your own and kind of expand the awareness of available careers. So you can use your textbook or any other outside sources. I put this website on here for ag careers that might be helpful. So you can look at that, and that'll talk a little bit about some careers that are available. So basically, I just want you to kind of type up an answer to these 5 questions. What career did you pick? What industry is it in? You know, kind of in the ones we talked in today, or it might be in a different industry. What are the job responsibilities associated with the position, and what qualifications are needed if you want to pursue a career in this area? And then why is this position of interest? And so really try to answer these, you know, a little bit more than like just a 1-sentence answer. Try to really give it some thought, you know, and you might find something in this exercise that appeals to you that maybe you didn't know was out there before. So I hope that you get something out of this assignment, and that will be due next Friday. So you should be able to just go in and click on this assignment and then submit in Blackboard. So you'll have like a little over a week to get that done. I think it's due Friday night at 11:59. So any questions about that? All good? All right. Well, it's right at time, so I will let y'all go. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Have a good Labor Day. Right, best day.